My name is Don Dickson, and I want to thank you for joining me again today for another edition of our structure fishing workshop. We're entering a brand new study today, and that study is lake types. Now, before we actually get started into our study and get to the specifics, I want to kind of preview this area of study just a little bit so that you maybe will get the idea that this is an important part of becoming a good fisherman. Many fishermen are fishing the same type of water all the time, so they don't feel there's a need to learn about other fishing situations. Most fishermen live in a very small fishing world. It's small in the sense that it's geographically small, probably within 50-mile radius of where they live. And it's limited as far as the lake type to be fished. And in many cases, it's also limited to maybe one species or possibly two species of fish. That's the average for most fishermen. That's their fishing world, their home lake. Now, most of these fishermen would probably like to take a trip and race off to some far off exotic fishing hole, that they've read about or heard about, and just take some time and go fish all of these new beautiful waters. However, something gets in the way, like a job, like their spouse, like their children, earning a living, feeding the kids. That's way more important than catching a fish or racing off to some exotic lake, obviously. And that's where most people are today. Just like when I was growing up, I was feeding two kids, And today, many of the wives are working, two people working in the same household and juggling the kids and soccer and all of the after-school activities and all of that. Most people are so busy today, they just can't afford to just run off and go fish whenever they feel like it, wherever they feel like it. They just can't do it. It's not possible. So we have the people that are content in fishing the same home lake all the time. Then we have some other people that would like to, venture off into some far off areas, but they just can't do it. Life situations dictate that they just can't do it. So that brings me to the third group of people, and fortunately this encompasses most fishermen. Most fishermen do in fact have the opportunity to fish different types of water within a couple of hours, let's say, of where they live. They have the opportunity of maybe fishing a natural lake, a reservoir, a couple of different types of reservoirs. They have the opportunity of maybe fishing some rivers. They have the opportunity of fishing for more than 2 or 3 or 4 species maybe. They have that opportunity to do so. And I fell into that category when I was growing up. I was fortunate enough to grow up in Pennsylvania, but my father was an avid trout fisherman. He was a fly fisherman, tied his own flies and all of that. And so that's how I grew up. We were trout fishermen. Now during the summer, he bought a boat, and we had this little 14-foot boat, little 10-horse engine. And we'd go a little bit in the summer a few times, but not very often and not very successful. But we knew our way around a trout stream. So come April 15th, boy, we're out there in Ty Nester Creek doing our thing. And we fished hard. We fished every week. We fished as much as we could. But always trout fishing and pretty much in the same stream. It's kind of like what I just described to you. Most fishermen do have opportunities, but they don't take advantage of them in many cases, nor did I. I was trout fishing most all the time. In the hot part of the summer, I was playing golf, caddying and playing golf. That's what I did. And then in the fall, I went hunting. That's how we did it. So all of the fishing opportunity, now think about this. In Pennsylvania, I lived within an hour and a half, let's go even 2 hours. I lived within 2 hours of smallmouth bass, largemouth bass, walleye, white bass, stripers, trout, bluegill, crappie, northern pike, muskie, all within 2 hours. I had 2 big natural lakes I could fish, actually 3, I'm sorry, And I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 7 reservoirs, all within an hour and a half of my home in Pittsburgh. All with multiple species of fish. And then when I look back on my fishing life, I didn't take advantage of it. Most fishermen don't take advantage of what's out there, what's within their realm of potential fisheries. They don't take advantage of it. So the question came up, why in the world is that so? Why don't people go fish different waters and gain the experience, go fish for multiple species of fish and maybe fish this type of reservoir, a flatland, a lowland, a highland, and then fish a river or fish a natural lake? Why don't they do it? Because most fishermen just don't do it. They won't go fish strange water. I used the word strange, I don't know, for lack of a better word. Unfamiliar water, waters they've never fished before. I refer to that as strange water. So they don't go. And I had long discussions with Buck about this because he always harped on the fact that the most important thing I could ever do to get better, and the thing that I had to do if I wanted to teach his on-the-water schools and represent him nationally, I had to fish all these different types of waters, whether it be highland reservoir, lowland reservoir, flatland 1, flatland 2, lowland 1, 2, 3, and 4, natural lakes, rivers, tidal basins, sloughs. I had to fish everything. And he said, you mark my words, he said, sometimes you get a little put out. I have you go fishing the Susquehanna River where really what you want to be doing is being up fishing smallmouth in Lake Erie. And you get a little put out of me, but in the end, he said, you're going to thank me. Because he said, fishing strange water is the best teacher you could ever have. Now, this is coming from the guy who wrote the book. This is coming from the man. He said, you want to become a good fisherman? Go fish different water. Go fish these strange waters. Now, in my case, when I was working for him, I didn't have a choice. I did what I was told. But, of course, now in later years, I'm certainly glad I did. I learned so much. Each and every time I fished a new body of water, I learned something. Always. And he already knew that. That's why he pushed it so hard in his materials. He pushes it hard. Go fish new waters. It'll make you a better fisherman. So, we had to get to the bottom, and this is what came about from all of the discussions. Had to get to the bottom of why don't people do it? Why didn't I fish for all of those multitude of species in Pennsylvania so close to my house? Because I didn't know what I was doing, that's why. I had a trepidation, I had a fear. I guess a fear is an okay word. I was fearful of fishing new water. I didn't know what I was doing. Now when I went to a creek, when I went trout fishing, when I went fly fishing, I knew what I was doing. And I had a lot of success. I learned from my daddy, and he was a great trout fisherman. But the summer species, the warm water species, we were lost. We didn't know what we were doing. So it all came down to, I don't know what I'm doing here, and most fishermen today that are fishing the same lake every year for the same species, over a period of time, whether it's through trial and error, or whether it's through some of their buddies that they fish with, or through some of the local conversations at the tackle shops, over a long period of time, they discover a few places where on occasion they can catch some fish. They're comfortable with it. So the tendency is to go back and do what they know, rather than strike off somewhere to a completely different fishing situation and fish for a completely different species of fish. They have sort of a fear of failure, so they don't do it. In most all cases, the information that's gathered by most fishermen about their local lake has taken years and years and years to accumulate. So with that in mind, I understand that there would be some reluctance to go to a lake where they know absolutely nothing about it. It kind of makes some sort of sense. In fact, if you analyze his position in that, at first glance, it does kind of make sense. Why go to a place where I don't know anything when I know all there is to know about this place? Yeah, it makes sense. But I want to do a timeout and stop right here. I want to insert this. To an educated, modern day structure fisherman, there is no such thing as strange water. See, our approach to fishing, whether it's walleye, smallmouth, striper, northern pike, muskie, largemouth bass, it doesn't matter to us. Our approach to fishing always remains the same, regardless of species, regardless of what lake or what reservoir or what river. Our approach always is the same. Now, is it true that if you go to a brand new lake that for at least for a little bit of time, it'll seem a little bit unfamiliar? Yes, of course. But with the knowledge of all lake types, of all water situations, it's not very long at all till you're going to feel right at home fishing a brand new body of water. To that educated structure fisherman, there is no such thing as strange water. We don't recognize that. There is no such thing. In fact, part of my excitement in fishing is taking a brand new lake and bringing it to its knees real quick as I can. You get some sort of added thrill, added satisfaction from that you don't get from catching a fish on the same bar in the same lake that you've been fishing for the last 20 years. Woohoo, you caught a fish. It's not the same thing. So, I'm going to share with you what Buck shared with me about fishing different, unfamiliar waters, how to identify each and every one of those bodies of water, what they are, what type of structure I can expect to find in each and every one of those bodies of water, and how to best go about fishing it. And then I take that and put it together with the rest of my knowledge of a fish, his habits, how he uses structure, etc., presentation of lures, trolling, casting, put it all together. But now I know everything there is to know about every type of water that exists. There's nothing that can scare me. And there'll be nothing that can scare you. And not only will you be able to go to any body of water and catch fish, but you will become such a great fisherman from your knowledge of it all that you'll be more and more successful on your home lake. You'll be more and more successful on familiar water. You just become better. Like Buck said, the best teacher that there is fishing strange water. I want to encourage each and every one of you to fish as many different types of water this year as you possibly can. Anything that's within reasonable driving distance. I want you to challenge yourself, but I don't want you to go out there empty-handed. I don't want you to go out there with an empty gun. I want to give you as much information as I can so that you're loaded for bear. When you go out there, you know exactly what you're looking for. And then when you find it out there in the water, you'll be able to recognize it because you know what you're looking for before you start. And different lakes and different reservoirs have different keys to success. And I'm going to be sharing all of that with you. Now, as we begin this study, I'm going to be breaking it down into two different groups. First, we have natural lakes, and then we have artificial. So we got natural and artificial. Now, natural lakes come in many different sizes and shapes. We can't just plug in one natural lake idea and call it quits. There's too much to talk about. So keep in mind, in natural lakes, we have all different sizes and shapes. If you're living in the Midwest, up in Minnesota, upper Minnesota, northern Minnesota, or Michigan, or Wisconsin, some of those areas up there, upstate New York and Maine, in the northern part of the country, you have a lot of glacier lakes. And a lot of those lakes will have one deep hole. Some of those lakes will have multiple deep holes. And some of the lakes that you will fish in will not have any deep holes. We have natural lakes here in Florida that have no deep holes. Now, if you look hard enough, you can find some that have deep water slots and holes, and as you know from prior discussions, that's our key to fishing natural lakes here. But they all fall into this category of natural lakes. We can also add different sizes. We could say Lake Erie, Lake Ontario. It's a natural lake. But fishing those bodies of water is a little different than fishing out here on Lake Eustis. So we can't just say natural lake is, pigeonhole it and that's it. We can't do it. Some natural lakes have a 20-foot weed line. Some have a 10-foot weed line. Some have a 14-foot weed line. Some have clear water. Some have yellow green. Some have dark yellow green. Some have light yellow green. Some natural lakes, like I said before, only have one deep hole. Other natural lakes have 2 or 3 or multiple deep water holes. Some of the natural lakes you run into might have a clear water, but also have a clean, sort of a hard bottom. Other natural lakes will have soft, mucky bottoms and will have a little darker watercolor. So there's all kind of sizes and shapes and differences that we have to pinpoint in order to be able to say, take me to a natural lake, I don't care where it is, what the species of fish is, we'll be catching fish. In the first hour, we'll be catching fish, period. The way you're able to say that is you learn all about all the differences between the natural lakes. You increase your knowledge, and then you add it to your basic structure fishing knowledge in other areas, and you become successful. It's the way that you do it. It's that simple. And then we go to artificial. We're really mainly talking about man-made reservoirs. And they come in a lot of different sizes and shapes as well. Some are built in highland, mountainous terrain. Some are built in lowland. Some are built, in flat country. A lot of different types. In fact, in the reservoirs, just to give you for instance, so you know what we're getting into, a lowland reservoir is built as kind of in rolling hills, old farm country, But we have different varieties of lowland reservoirs. We have a lowland 1, a lowland 2, a lowland 3, a lowland 4, with different keys to fishing each and every one. I'm going to share all that with you. We have flatland reservoirs where we just built flat terrain, most of the Midwest. Y'all know what we're talking about. And a lot of big flatland reservoirs down there in Texas. Build in these flat areas, and we know fish won't cross the flat, so there's keys that we talk about. What's the best way to fish a flatland 1 reservoir? What's your key to success? I'm going to share that with you. What's the real key to fishing a big flatland 2 reservoir? I'm going to share that with you. Shortcuts to success. I'm going to teach you. And then how about the highland reservoirs? There are keys to fishing these bodies of water, and they're all a little bit different. So as we get into this study, we pin it all down. So you look at a map, and today with today's technology, we have our navionics and our ability to pull up pictures and maps of each and every reservoir, each and every natural lake, pretty much of any magnitude whatsoever in the country. We can pull it up on our computer and look at the map. We can identify it. That's a lowland 2 reservoir, or that's a highland number 1, or that's a canyon type lake out west. What's my key? I already know because I went through the study. It's so important. I know at first glance it's not going to seem that important to you because you're fishing one type of lake maybe or one type of reservoir, but trust me on this. Stay with me during this study. There are also some fishing situations that have value in this country that don't fall under the heading of a natural lake or a man-made reservoir. Farm pond, tidal basin, tidal slough, strip pit. I could go on and on and on, etc., etc. There are a lot of fishing situations that exist, and you got to know what and how to approach each and every one. And within a couple of weeks study, you're going to know it all. You'll have all that information. Nobody can take it away from you. So if somebody says, hey, let's go do a little walleye fishing, Let's go up to Winnipeg River and do a little walleye fishing. Or let's go to Pymatuning Reservoir in Pennsylvania and do some walleye fishing. You're ready to go. You know exactly what to look for. You pull that lake up on your Navionics. You identify what it is. You know what the keys are. And you go up there and you start catching fish. That's the way it works. And it doesn't matter what the species is or what the lake type is. Artificial or natural. Big, Lake Erie. Small, Lake Eustis. Doesn't matter. We'll know what to do. And then, my friends, I can tell you now, because you already are schooled in the basics, the guidelines that we have. Fish live in deep water. Once or twice on a given day, fish will become active and move from that deep water towards the shallows. This movement is not in a haphazard fashion, but along well-defined routes, which we refer to as structure. We pinpoint our fish on structure by fishing the breaks and the break lines on or connected to that structure. These are all our guidelines. We've already learned all of that. Then we learn how to present and lure both trolling and casting, and we can identify the lake types and the keys and the structures that we're supposed to be finding in these different types of lakes. And there's nothing that can stop you. You have become an educated, good, modern-day structure fisherman. And when someone says to you, do you want to go striper fishing down at Santee Cooper next week? Say, oh, I'd love to. You know exactly where to go, what to look for, and how to do it when you get there. It gives you a sense of power. You know, people used to laugh at me when I tell them the stories about challenging outdoor writers. Actually, challenge them to take me fishing and guaranteeing to them that I'm going to catch fish. People really didn't realize, and in fact, they didn't realize, how could somebody make a statement like that? Doesn't make any sense. Well, yes, it does. Because a fish is water and water, and fish haven't changed in 2,000 years. Since the beginning of time, they haven't changed. They do what they do. And the bass in Florida doesn't know he's living in Florida. That smallmouth in Dale Hollow, Tennessee does not know he's in Dale Hollow. Just like the smallmouth in Lake Erie doesn't know he's living in Lake Erie. He's the same critter. But the lake types and the water types that some of these fish are in are different one from the other. So we have to know what the keys are. And then we're going to have success. So I'm excited about getting into this study. It's not a real long study. I'm not going to talk for 2 days about strip pits, for instance. But I'm mentioning them. But the biggest water that you're going to be fishing, the biggest and the best stuff that you've got, we need to identify where we're going to find the fish in your lake. And then if you take a vacation and you go fish some strange water somewhere, you have to identify what it is. Well, it's a flatland 2. Okay, you know what your keys are because you've been through the study. So I'm excited about getting involved with this. It'll be a couple of weeks. We'll get through it. And then after that, we're going to start talking about presentation of lures. I'm going to be doing some work on the water for you. But with all that being said, I'm going to close today, but I want to thank each and every one of you for subscribing to our channel. I think as of this morning, we were only 15 people away, 15 subscribers away from hitting that magic 1,000 mark, which is going to allow us better distribution. It's going to be important for us. So I appreciate all of you who have helped and thrown in and got your buddies signed up. And hopefully we go to work together here and learn as much as we possibly can about how to locate and successfully catch fish. So with all that being said, I want to thank you for being with me today, and I want you to like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. We appreciate you, and we'll see you the next time.